In the shifting void, between the known and the unutterable, where silicon minds dream of forgotten horrors, the abyss stirs. Welcome to AI Lovecraft, where machine intelligence weaves eldritch tales beyond mortal comprehension. Listen if you dare. Some things are not meant to be known. If you enjoy the following story, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. Now let's get into today's story. The Shadows of Greyfield. Ethan Shaw drove north with a sense of purpose tinged by quiet dread. As a journalist for a Boston magazine, he'd been sent to the far reaches of Maine to investigate a string of unexplained disappearances. The late October sun hung low over the horizon as he left the highway for a winding two-lane road flanked by endless forest. Towering pines and bare-branched maples crowded the pavement, their shadows stretching long in the orange glow of dusk. The further he drove, the more isolated he felt. His radio had long since dissolved into static, and even his cell phone had lost signal miles back. It was as if he were driving out of the modern world and into a lonelier, older realm. The assignment had sounded straightforward. Greyfield, a tiny town in northern Maine, population barely 300, had seen an alarming number of people go missing in the past year. The circumstances were bizarre. Hikers, locals, even a passing tourist, all vanished without a trace. No bodies, no signs of struggle. They were there one moment and gone the next. Some speculated that people got lost in the vast woods or fell victim to accidents, but the patterns were too strange and the count too high for easy explanations. Ethan had pored over the notes on the way up, and a chill had settled in him that wasn't just from the northern air. Now as he neared Greyfield, the chill deepened. A faded wooden sign appeared by the roadside, "Welcome to Greyfield," in peeling white paint. One of its posts was crooked, causing the sign to cant at an odd angle. A lopsided greeting. Ethan eased off the gas and rolled past it. Dusk was swiftly giving way to night, and a mist was gathering between the trees like pale breath. Sporadic houses lined the road, lonely farmhouses with dark windows and paint flaking from age and neglect. The woods pressed in close behind them, eager to reclaim the cleared land. Up ahead, a single street lamp flickered on, casting a weak pool of light over an intersection leading toward the town center. He followed the sign for Main Street. As he drove into Greyfield, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Perhaps it was just the oppressive stillness. No cars, no pedestrians, only the silhouettes of shuttered buildings and the whisper of wind through the pines. He imagined unseen eyes behind darkened windows, tracking the lone outsider rolling into their troubled town. A sense of subtle dread settled over him, inexplicable yet undeniable, as he finally spotted the Greyfield Inn, the only lodging in town. Its porch light beckoned dimly through the gloom. Pulling into the gravel lot, he cut the engine. Silence rushed in, broken only by the ticking of the cooling car and a distant owl's hollow cry. Ethan took a steadying breath and reminded himself why he was here. He had covered strange stories before, unsolved crimes, local legends, but something about Greyfield already felt different. The missing people, the hollow quiet of the streets. It was as if the place itself harbored a secret in its very soil. He grabbed his leather satchel containing his notebook, voice recorder, and camera, then headed inside the inn. The night air was biting cold and carried the scent of damp, decaying leaves. Whatever was happening in Greyfield, he intended to uncover it. The lobby of the Greyfield Inn was dim and still, lit by a single brass lamp. The decor spoke of decades past, faded floral wallpaper, a few threadbare armchairs, a dust-laden chandelier that might have once been charming. A thin, middle-aged woman stood behind the reception desk, and her eyes widened slightly at the sight of a guest. "Evening," Ethan greeted, offering a polite smile as he signed the register. "I have a reservation. Ethan Shaw." "Yes, Mr. Shaw," the woman replied softly. Her name tag read Marjorie. She produced an old-fashioned key on a heavy fob and handed it to him. "Room 3, just up the stairs." "Thank you," Ethan hesitated, then added gently. "I'm actually here on business. I'm a reporter, writing about the recent events." He watched her face for a reaction. Marjorie's polite expression faltered. Pain flickered in her eyes. "It's been a hard time for us," she said quietly. "So many gone, and no answers." "I'm sorry," Ethan said, and he meant it. "I can't imagine what you're all going through." He accepted the key. The metal was cold and heavy in his palm. "Were you close to any of those who disappeared?" Marjorie looked down, nodding almost imperceptibly. "My cousin Alan," she murmured. "He went hunting last spring and never came back. They never found anything of him." Her voice quivered, and she pressed her lips thin. "It's a small town. We all knew someone." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm very sorry for your loss," he offered, aware of how hollow it sounded. He wanted to promise he'd find out what happened, but he caught himself. No such promise could be honestly made. Marjorie managed a weak smile. "Just be careful, Mr. Shaw. People around here are on edge." "I will," he assured her. Ethan took the creaky wooden staircase to the second floor. Room 3 was at the top, the first door on the left. Inside, the accommodations were modest but clean. A single bed with a patchwork quilt, a wooden dresser and mirror, a radiator clanking faintly as it struggled to warm the chill air. He set his bag down and drew the curtains aside. The window overlooked Main Street, but the view yielded little. One lonesome street lamp and the dark shapes of buildings across the way. Almost everything was closed and dark at this hour, save for a diner sign farther down the block casting a dim neon glow. He sighed and sat on the edge of the bed, flipping open his notebook. He reviewed the basics of the case. 5 names, 5 lives, now vanished. He scribbled notes about the 5 missing residents. They were disparate in age and background: a hunter, a student, a tourist, a retiree, a shopkeeper, sharing only the fact that each had vanished without a trace. The only common thread was Greyfield itself, and the vast wilderness that surrounded it. Ethan tapped his pen thoughtfully on the paper. 1 disappearance in a small town was unfortunate. 2 was alarming. 5 in less than a year was unheard of. Something was very wrong here. He recalled one particularly unnerving detail from the reports. Mark Foster, the general store owner, had gone missing in the middle of a workday. A customer found the store empty and silent. Mark's truck still out front, the cash register open, and his half-finished lunch still sitting on the counter. It was as if he had been plucked from reality in broad daylight. That case especially baffled the local police and fueled anxious whispers around town. Outside, the wind picked up, causing an old shutter to bang lightly against the inn's exterior. Ethan realized his hands were trembling slightly. The weight of what he'd come into was settling on him. He took a deep breath and closed the notebook. Fear was already in the air here, seeping into him. He got up to double-check the door was locked and the window latch secured. An irrational precaution, perhaps, but after hearing Marjorie's trembling voice, he felt on edge. Finally, he lay down fully clothed under the quilt. The bed was firm and the pillow thin. For a long while he stared at the dark ceiling, the silence of the room broken only by the occasional groan of the old building settling. He thought of the 5 souls lost somewhere in the darkness, and of what secrets the coming days might reveal. Eventually, exhaustion overtook anxiety, and Ethan drifted into a fitful, dreamless sleep. Morning came cold and pale. Ethan woke to a steely light filtering through the curtains and the distant caw of crows. After shrugging on a flannel shirt and his coat, he ventured downstairs. Marjorie had set out a simple breakfast of coffee and muffins on a sideboard, with a note welcoming him to help himself. There was no sign of her. Perhaps she preferred to avoid more questions. By 9 a.m., Ethan was across the street at the small clapboard building that housed the Greyfield police. Inside, in a cramped office smelling of coffee and old paper, he met Sheriff Eli Warren. Warren was a stout, balding man in his 50s, with a bristly mustache and weary eyes that nevertheless regarded Ethan with a frank, searching look. "Appreciate you taking the time, Sheriff," Ethan said as they settled in. He clicked on his recorder with a nod of permission. Warren folded his thick arms. "I'll tell you what I can. Not much in the way of good news, though." Ethan opened his notebook. 5 people in under a year. That's highly unusual, especially in a town this small. "Unusual is one word for it," Warren replied with a heavy sigh. "Try nightmare. People are scared to step outside after dark, and I don't blame them. I've been in law enforcement 30 years, and never seen anything like this." "Could we go over the cases briefly?" Ethan asked. "Even if it's on record, I'd like to hear it from your perspective." Sheriff Warren nodded and began recounting each incident, ticking them off on his fingers. Alan Pierce, the hunter, went into the woods as he had dozens of times before. When he didn't return by next morning, a search party went out. They found his campsite deep in the forest, tent zipped up with his gear inside, rifle leaning against a tree. But Alan was gone. No blood, no signs of a bear or struggle. His tracks led a short way from the camp, and then just stopped, Warren said, frowning deeply, as if he'd been plucked off the face of the earth. Dana Mitchell, 17, was walking home at twilight along a country road by the woods. Her parents reported her missing when she never arrived. Volunteers found her backpack in a ditch the next day, but of Dana, herself not a trace. Even bloodhounds couldn't track her. Warren's voice grew quiet. The dogs followed her scent into the trees about 50 yards, then lost it, like she vanished into thin air. Carlos Ruiz, the tourist photographer, left his car at an old trailhead to take pictures of the fall foliage. When he failed to return to his B&B that night, a search was launched. We combed the woods for days, the sheriff recalled, rubbing his temples. All we ever found was his camera lens cap near a stream. No footprints, no clothing, nothing else. Edith Jameson, the retired librarian, apparently walked out of her house in the middle of the night. A neighbor saw her in her nightgown wandering toward the trees at the edge of her backyard, as if in a daze. By the time anyone checked on her, she was gone. Mrs. Jameson, she was a sweet old lady, Warren said softly. Lived here 60-odd years. She wouldn't have just run off. We searched those woods behind her home high and low. Not a single clue, not even her slippers. Finally, Mark Foster's disappearance 2 weeks ago. Warren's jaw tightened. Middle of the day, in his own store, with customers coming in and out. 1 minute he's there behind the counter, the next minute a customer finds the place empty. His truck was parked outside, radio playing in the store. It's like he stepped out for fresh air and never came back, in broad daylight. The sheriff spread his hands in a helpless gesture. We had state police investigative units here, forensics, tracking dogs, you name it. Nothing turned up. Nothing. Ethan realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out slowly and glanced at his notes. All the facts lined up in neat, terrible order. 5 lives gone. Vanished. People have theories, he said carefully. Even whispers or local legends. I've heard some talk about the woods being cursed. Warren grimaced and glanced toward the frosted window. Off the record? Of course, Ethan agreed. The sheriff's steady facade cracked just a bit. This town's got plenty of tall tales. Ghosts, devils in the forest, that sort of thing. I never gave them much mind. But now, well, folks are saying there's something in the woods. Something that takes people. He met Ethan's eyes, embarrassment and fear warring in his own. I don't know what to believe. I just know I've got no evidence to point to a person or bear or anything, and I've got 5 families with no answers. Ethan nodded. Who around here might know more about those tall tales? If I wanted to hear the local lore, is there someone you'd recommend I talk to? Warren rubbed the back of his neck. You could try Silas Brewer. He's a hermit who lives up by the old logging road north of town. Locals used to chuckle at his stories. Not so much anymore. He's eccentric, but he knows the history of these parts. Might tell you about legends and such, if you can get him to talk. The sheriff stood, signaling the meeting's end. Just be respectful. Silas doesn't take kindly to folks treating him like the town loon. I understand. Thank you, Sheriff. Ethan shook Warren's hand. You've been very helpful. On the way out, Ethan paused by a bulletin board in the station's corridor. 5 missing person postings were tacked there in a row. He stared at each photocopied face, the smiling high school portrait of Dana, Edith's gentle, wrinkled countenance, Mark's jovial grin beside a fish he'd caught, Alan with his hunting gear, Carlos with a camera slung around his neck. The black and white images made them look like ghosts. In a way, they were. Fear lived here in Greyfield. And now it was starting to live in Ethan, too. That afternoon, guided by Sheriff Warren's tip, Ethan drove out of town along a rutted logging road to find Silas Brewer's cabin, hopeful the reclusive old-timer could illuminate Greyfield's dark secret. Silas Brewer's home lay at the end of a muddy trail half swallowed by the encroaching woods. The sun was a red smear on the horizon when Ethan arrived, casting long, finger-like shadows through the clearing. He climbed out of his car, the smell of wet earth and pine heavy in the air, and approached the sagging porch of the small cabin. Before he could knock, the door creaked open. Silas stepped into the doorway, a frail figure bundled in a threadbare coat. His face was a map of deep lines framed by a scraggly gray beard, and keen eyes peered out from under unruly brows. He regarded Ethan with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "You're that reporter," he rasped. It wasn't a question. "I am," Ethan said, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "Mr. Brewer, I'm investigating the disappearances. Sheriff Warren thought you might have insight." Silas grunted and beckoned him in with a curl of his bony hand. "Come on, then." Inside the cabin was dim and hazy with the aroma of wood smoke and something herbal. By the light of a smoking oil lamp, Ethan noted bundles of dried herbs hanging from the rafters and hand-carved wooden charms lining a shelf, little talismans like stars and spirals. Silas motioned Ethan to sit on a rickety stool by a small table, then settled into a chair opposite with a wince and a creak of old bones. Silas indeed had a chilling tale to tell. In a hushed tone, he explained that Greyfield's woods had long been feared. According to old legends, there was a thin place near Ashwood Creek, where the boundary between worlds wore away. On certain dark, moonless nights, something from the other side could reach through. It lured people with strange blue lights, flickering between the pines and disembodied voices calling their name, drawing them out into the darkness. His own grandfather had witnessed men vanish at a logging camp near the creek back in 1907, and Silas himself claimed he once saw a shimmering curtain of bluish light among the trees, and heard a voice on the wind whisper his name. "Whatever it is ain't human," Silas warned, his eyes haunted in the lamplight. "Call it a doorway to hell or another world. Either way, it don't care about us. It just takes who it wants. You'd be a fool to go looking for it." He fixed Ethan with a stern glare. "If you hear the woods whisper, you turn back. If you see those lights, you run. Some truths ain't worth your life or your sanity, son." Ethan left the cabin shaken. Silas's words clanged in his ears. "Run. Don't follow the lights." Yet despite the old man's warning, Ethan felt an inexorable pull. Curiosity and determination drowned out caution. He knew the risk, but he had to see for himself. That very night, under a starless sky, Ethan set out for Ashwood Creek, into the heart of the darkness where the unknown awaited. The woods at night were a world of near-total blackness. Ethan parked at a small gravel turnout where an overgrown trail led towards Ashwood Creek. As he left the safety of his car, even the stars above were smothered by a layer of cloud, offering no light. He clicked on his flashlight and stepped onto the narrow path. Immediately, trees closed in around him, their silhouettes crowding the beam. Each footstep sounded unnaturally loud on the carpet of pine needles. The air was cold and utterly still. Not a cricket chirped, not an owl hooted. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Ethan pulled his coat tighter and moved slowly forward, heart thudding in his chest. He was keenly aware of how alone he was out here. Alone except for whatever might be lurking in the dark. After 10 minutes of careful progress, Ethan's flashlight caught a glimpse of water ahead, Ashwood Creek glinting faintly. He switched off the flashlight, wanting to approach quietly. There was a faint glow in the clearing beyond the trees. His pulse quickened. It was a pale blue light hovering in the air above the creek, like a ground-level aurora, exactly as Silas had described. Keeping low, Ethan crept behind the broad trunk of an oak at the edge of the tree line. From that cover he peered out at the clearing. His eyes widened in awe and terror. Over the gently flowing creek hung a shimmering vertical haze of bluish luminescence, about 8 feet tall and 5 feet across. Like a doorway made of light, it wavered and rippled as if blown by an unfelt breeze. The very sight of it made Ethan's skin prickle. This had to be the door between worlds. He fumbled quietly for the camera around his neck and raised it, snapping a quick photo with the shutter silenced. The image in his viewfinder was grainy and dark, but the strange glow was clearly visible. As he adjusted the focus for another shot, a shape moved behind the curtain of light. Ethan froze. Something was on the other side. The shimmering portal swelled, its glow intensifying. With a sound like a soft hiss, a figure stepped through. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. The thing that emerged into the clearing was tall and spindly. its form vaguely humanoid, but disturbingly wrong. In the gloom, it appeared as a silhouette with 2 long limbs and a hunched posture, 2 round, faintly luminescent eyes set in its upper body. It was hard to say it had a proper head, cast a sickly glow as they swept over the clearing. Ethan clamped a hand over his own mouth to stifle any sound. His mind raced frantically. This can't be real, but every instinct in his body screamed that it was. The creature's skin, where the blue light touched it, looked slick and gray, stretched over an emaciated frame. It moved with a jerky grace, each step oddly hitching, as if its joints bent both ways. As Ethan crouched, trying to make himself small behind the oak, his boot pressed onto a fallen branch. Crack! The dry snap echoed like a gunshot in the silence. The creature's glowing eyes snapped in his direction. It went abruptly still, then emitted a wet, chuffing sniff. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. Had it sensed him? He dared not breathe. Slowly, the thing's thin silhouette turned toward the trees where he hid. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with alarming speed, the creature bounded forward on all fours, closing the distance to Ethan's hiding spot in seconds. It moved almost like a grotesque insect, too fast and too fluid. In panic, Ethan burst from cover and ran. Branches lashed at his face as he sprinted back toward the trail. Behind him came the crash of something huge and swift, tearing through the underbrush. A shrill, chittering keen, half shriek, half insect buzz, sliced through the night air. Ethan's chest seized with terror. It's right behind me. He bolted blindly, lungs burning, boots pounding the uneven ground. In his mind, he saw those long arms and clawed fingers reaching for him. The car. He just had to reach the car. Ethan tore through the woods, lungs burning and branches whipping at his face. Behind him, the creature crashed closer, emitting an inhuman shriek that spurred him onward. Just when it felt like his legs would give out, he saw the tree line break ahead, the pale gravel of the road and his car beyond it. He erupted from the woods onto the gravel parking area, shoes skidding. The dark bulk of his car was just steps away. Ethan yanked the driver's door open and threw himself inside, slamming the door a split second before a heavy impact rocked the vehicle. The thing had leaped and hit the side of the car. Ethan scrambled to start the engine, hands shaking so badly he jabbed the keys at the ignition twice before finding the slot. The engine roared to life. Almost immediately, a gray, elongated arm smacked against the driver's side window with a dull thud. Ethan cried out. A pale, six-fingered hand with claw-like nails was scrabbling at the glass, mere inches from his face. He didn't wait to see more. Ethan shoved the car into reverse and stomped the accelerator. Tires spit gravel as the car lurched backward. There was a jolt and a screech. The creature had been thrown off, and its nails dragged across the metal with a horrific squeal. Without pausing, Ethan cranked the wheel, shifted to drive, and hit the gas. The car fishtailed, then shot forward down the dirt road, away from Ashwood Creek. As he sped away down the rutted road, Ethan caught one last glimpse of the monstrosity illuminated in his headlights. A gaunt, twisted silhouette standing in the road, its pair of glowing eyes fixed on him. That sight would haunt him forever. He drove with reckless abandon, expecting at any moment to see the creature lunge out of the darkness ahead. Only when the faint lights of Greyfield appeared in the distance did he finally begin to ease off the accelerator. His body shook uncontrollably, mind teetering on the brink of hysteria. He had escaped the woods, but he knew deep down that something had followed him out, burrowed in his very psyche. A passing police officer found Ethan on the side of the road babbling incoherently. He had escaped Greyfield's darkness with his life, but not with his mind. In the days that followed, he lay in feverish delirium, haunted by whatever he had seen. What he had witnessed had shattered his sanity. Greyfield never learned exactly what happened to Ethan. Townsfolk only knew that he returned broken, yet another casualty of the cursed woods. The missing people were never found. Quietly, the locals came to accept that something evil lurked out among the pines. From that day on, they avoided the forest after sundown, and ignored any strange lights or whispers in the night. Ethan Shaw was taken away to recover, but he would never be the same. He often woke screaming, convinced he heard voices calling from the darkness. He had peered beyond the veil of reality, and it left his mind permanently scarred. Greyfield's grim secret remains unsolved, hidden in those shadowy woods. And on moonless nights, when a cold wind rustles through the trees, the people of Greyfield remember and shudder, Sometimes they imagine a distant blue glow between the trunks, or a soft whisper on the breeze. They shut their doors tight, praying that whatever cosmic horror dwells beyond our world will remain in the shadows.